Welcome to the Lady Landlords podcast, where we empower women to gain financial independence through real estate investing. I'm your host, Becky Nova, founder of Lady Landlords. If you're ready to buy, manage, and grow your real estate portfolio, then let's get started.
With the 4th of July coming up in the next few days here, I really got to thinking about kind of the freedom and independence that is also in my own life. And this to me is always a really, really important time of year because it's not just July 4th, Independence Day, but it also is the anniversary of my Freedom Day, the day that I realized that I hit my freedom number, which I'll explain what that is in a minute, but the day that I hit my freedom number and I was actually able to quit my full-time employment and move full-time into real estate investing. For a very long time, I always thought about kind of that financial freedom being like uber wealth and money that was inherited through generations and really more in that space. What I realized though is it doesn't have to always look like that. And for most people, it doesn't. And it really just comes down to one simple number, okay? To share a little bit about how I kind of got there, and then I'm going to break it down on what your number is so you also have clarity on what that looks like and how you can go and attain the same thing. I just want to share a little bit about what my freedom and my Independence Day looks like for me. So my Independence Day is actually July 7th, okay? So 7/7 and then 2024, okay? So 2 years ago. Why is that day important for me? Why is that my Independence Day? For many years, I actually worked in cancer research. I did end-of-life clinical trials for hospitals I worked at for a long time, and then I really moved into working more on that pharmaceutical side. One thing that's actually interesting is I had been in that field really since like out of college. Even when I was back in school, I had actually worked at a sleep center and ran clinical trials for there. And then once I graduated from undergrad, I moved into cancer research, and that was a transition that I made. But there was actually a time when I'd been in that field for probably 7-8 years. I'd actually finished graduate school, and then I ended up back in cancer research. And I felt completely drained, and it really was just not the space for me. I was probably, 24, 25 then, and I was like, what do you mean this is what I'm supposed to be doing for the next 40 years? It just did not fit with me. I did take quite a bit of a hiatus. I really switched things up at that point in time. I went and I actually quit kind of on a whim. I was really unhappy with something that my boss had asked me to do that I felt was really unethical and was not going to help our patients at that point in time. So I just left. I quit a 6-figure salary and really just walked away. I really made a very big change at that point. I ended up moving to Europe. I went over to Spain. I started a tour company in Spain. I was the person that gave like historical walking tours like around the town, and I took people out on pub crawls at night. My claim to fame is I've actually taught more people how to play beer pong in this world than probably anyone else that you'll ever meet in your lives. And I actually really, really enjoyed my time doing that in Spain. I expanded into Portugal. I bought a bar in Portugal. I had a boss that actually took people back and forth between Spain and Portugal. Unfortunately, though, the business that I had bought in Portugal was a really, really bad idea. The guy I bought it from totally screwed me over. Lots of problems. That's for a whole nother podcast. But I really had to come back to the United States and really rebuild at that point in time. And what's interesting is a lot of people when I moved back were always like, oh my God, you must be so upset. Oh, you must find that so horrible. And to be honest, I kind of didn't. I learned so much. I was so proud of myself for doing it and for looking into something different and trying to live a different way. And honestly, it kind of gave me a little bit of a taste of freedom, and it really gave me a taste of entrepreneurship as well that I would later end up using when I started growing my real estate portfolio. But when I moved back to the States in, 2013, I think it was, 2014, somewhere around there, I needed money. And unfortunately, I had to go back to cancer research. At that period of time, what was great was I was actually able to go back to it in a very different capacity. And over the years, between 2015 and 2020, I was able to really kind of change what that role looked like, and I was able to get myself into a position where I actually really liked. I had a completely remote job. I was making really good money. I was making six figures in that. I controlled my own schedule. I had a great boss at the time. It was really in a space that it was just kind of like clockwork. I mean, I didn't find anything exciting. I didn't feel like I was being challenged. I didn't feel like I was growing or developing, which is something that's really important to me. But it's a little on Groundhog Day, but I was really just in a place where I was like, cool, I have like minimal time involvement. I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm just collecting a paycheck every single Friday. It wasn't a really bad space to be, but there was no like creativity being used. There was nothing challenging. I wasn't learning anything new. There wasn't a lot of mobility within the field that I was working at that I was able to change or grow or anything like that. But once again, at the point in time, everything was stable. I got to say, I probably had more free time at that period in my life than anything else I'd ever done, because it was just go to work, be there from 9 to 5, and go home, and I had the rest of my day. It was simple, but it wasn't interesting. It wasn't appealing. I always felt like I had something more that I could really do. At that period in time, in 2018, my husband, Emilio, and I actually bought our first property. Our first property was actually just supposed to be for us. That was just supposed to be our home. But we ended up buying a two-family, a duplex, because we wanted that rental income to come in. We are living in the New York area, right outside of New York City. Things are expensive. I did not want to live paycheck to paycheck. I just mentioned I lost this business that I had started in Europe for years, and I was probably in debt when I came back from that business. I was in debt by a little over $100,000. My credit score was destroyed. I had no money. So like I said, I really worked very hard to be able to grow my portfolio and get back to this financial literacy type space. At the time, we just made sense for us to buy that primary home that was a two-family, and we lived in one unit and rented out the other. I actually wasn't looking to become an investor. I wasn't looking to become a lady landlord at that period of time. That was just kind of a byproduct of this. But meanwhile, every day I just felt like I was on autopilot, where I just went to my job and just kind of did that. And I have to say, the thing that I felt like was really kind of lacking at that point in time was I didn't have any space that I could really build or work on for me or build something for me and my partner. It was really just kind of count on corporate America. That all changed though. In 2019 then, we actually had just a fantastic opportunity that came up to buy a second property. We did that at that period of time. And also it was part of my husband's goal to really be able to purchase a property in his home country in the Dominican Republic, and to actually purchase that to be rented to Dominicans, not the short-term rental on the beach, rented out to foreigners, but really to provide clean, stable housing for locals, for people that would actually be living there. And we picked up that property along the way. We still weren't like actively investing. I don't feel like this was something that we were like, woohoo, this is going to change our lives at this period of time. But it was just still kind of slowly dabbling in things like that. What I think changed was in 2019, my boss, who loved me, all of a sudden decided that she didn't like me anymore. And I'd seen her do this with other employees, where there was just somebody that like she was like BFFs with for a while, and they always got like really cool perks, and then she would like turn against them. Well, apparently it was my turn, and I really was not happy with what that looked like. I remember going back last year, I went back, I found some emails as I was moving actually into my new home, and I found some email and communications with that boss where I requested like time off. I requested like a long weekend, and I was like, hey, I have the time, I have all the PTO, I have my coverage, and I was like, I want to take off like Friday. And she was like, no. And I was like, what do you mean no? Like, I have that time, I have that availability, but all because she didn't like me meant that she got to control how I used my time. That's a dangerous thought, because that's where like I kind of fell into that, like, I don't care about this job position anymore. And that was a dangerous spot to be. The second thing that happened, March 2020 now, as I'm dealing with really being tortured at work by this point in time and making money for somebody else and not enjoying it, was the pandemic. In 2020, now, my husband was a person, he was working as a bartender for many years in New York City, and his bar shut. And him, others, so many other people in so many different jobs in different fields were all impacted by this. And I remember when my husband came home and literally was just like, I lost my job. Like, we are down an income stream. You hate your job. You're trying to find another job. I am now out of work and there's no other job I can go to. All restaurants are closed in New York City. The future is just uncertain right now with this pandemic. Like, what are we going to do? My response to him actually was, I think we should go buy more real estate. And I remember him just being like, what are you talking about, crazy lady? Like, oh, we need this job. Like, what do you mean we are down an income stream and you're talking about buying more rentals? And my answer was, yeah, we can't count on corporate America. We can't count on other people to take care of us in the same way. We can't count on other people to look out for our best interests. The only person that's responsible for us is us. And for me, that really changed a lot when I had realized at that point in time, we were making money with real estate. We had pretty much replaced his income by that period of time. And it was kind of weird to be able to say back to him, like, we don't really kind of need your income. And that was what carried us through the pandemic. I luckily left that job at that period of time and I moved into, and that's really when I was able to transition into some roles that I really, really enjoyed and were really, honestly, very minimal work. Nothing better than good money, but very little work to do. But that really was when I kind of said, hey, real estate really saved us during the pandemic. We had tenants that they lost their jobs, they weren't able to pay, and we were able to say, don't worry, we're going to be able to keep you in your home because we can cover the mortgage. We're still going to need you to pay rent and pay us back. But we were able to really actually work with our tenants through that situation because we were still making money from our other rentals during that time. So at that point in time, we really said, let's start to intentionally build. Let's really start to be able to grow this portfolio and start thinking about that. What really I needed there, though, was I needed to start thinking about what my freedom number is. That freedom number is going to be completely different for every single person that's listening to this. And it's important that you realize what your freedom number is. For me at that period of time, I wasn't looking to replace my salary. Like I said, I was making good money. It was simple work. I actually enjoyed what I did after we got rid of that old boss and I moved to a new company. So I wasn't really actually looking to retire early here. I just wanted to make sure that we had enough money that was covering our bills. What was going to make sure that our lights stayed on? What was going to be make sure that our mortgage was paid? Where was my buffer to make sure, because now we had a few rentals, what was going to make sure that if we had a big issue with the rental, or once again, if people weren't going to be able to pay their rent, that we were covered, that I was safe, that I can go to sleep and just not have to worry all the time financially. And also, I really like traveling, and I wanted some money where I can say, yes, I'm going to go on that trip, and I didn't have to say, sorry, I can't go, I got to watch my budget. That was something that was really important for me. And I wasn't talking about anything like crazy lavish here, but I'm just talking about if somebody wanted to go for a weekend and was like, hey, we rented a cabin for the 4th of July, do you want to come? It's going to be, $250 a person. I want to be like, yeah, I'm in. That's cool, I want to go to that. That was something that was really important to me at that time. So I had to really factor in what that number was at that period in time. And for me, it was just, let's just cover bases, right? But then all of a sudden that started kind of adding up. We started buying other rentals and buying small multifamilies throughout New York State at that period in time. And all of a sudden, kind of having that idea of replacing income and changing what my job was looking like, kind of that like time freedom stops really kind of feeling like that like way off distant dream and really started to feel like really just doing some basic math. And that became really important for me. That to me changed absolutely everything. We now started scaling intentionally. I was buying properties that I knew were going to get me closer to what that freedom number for us looked like. And now all of a sudden it became, I wanted kind of that FU money. I wanted to make sure that if I did want to leave my full-time employment, that I had the option to be able to do so. So now it became more than just covering a few bills and really kind of just being like our savings. But then this really became active purchasing. And I remember that there were amazing deals and opportunities that I saw out there, but they didn't really help me enough get to my goal. And my goal has always been, how do I make the most amount of money with the least amount of properties? I don't want to own a ton of properties. I want to own very few properties, but I want to make a lot of money from it, right? You might notice a trend in how I like to build businesses here and how I like to work. But that for me made it really clear what properties were going to be a fit for me and what properties weren't going to be a fit for me. So what happened on July 7th that made it my Independence Day? Well, 2 years ago now, what changed was I was now working for a company I loved. I had an amazing boss. The role, like I said, was absolutely fantastic what I was doing. I felt fulfilled as a person. I still felt like I was doing minimal work. I still felt like I was getting paid a ton of money for that minimal work. Kind of clutch. But what happened was I all of a sudden had that meeting pop on my calendar, okay? And for anybody that works in corporate America, you know when all of a sudden your boss puts a meeting on your calendar in the middle of the day with no email, no context, no nothing, and it starts in like 10 minutes, you know there's something going on. So I went to that meeting, and it was my boss, and there were about 6 other people. Everybody from my team was also there on that call. And my manager said, hey, I need to warn you guys, the company is going to have layoffs, and every director, which was her role, is tasked with letting go somebody from her team. So somebody from this team is going to have to leave, and there are going to be layoffs. I don't know who it is right now, but that information will be coming, but that will be happening in every single department across the company. And everybody's reaction was insane. People were furious. Even on this small call of 6, 7 people, there were so many people. I remember this one guy that was just like, well, how am I supposed to pay for my kid to go to school? How am I supposed to be able to pay for my mortgage? Another woman was talking about like her bills. She felt like she was already living paycheck to paycheck. And I'm talking about people that were all making 6 figures here, okay? All people that I'm talking about that are making good salaries by this point, that are not entry-level positions. These are all positions that, once again, I would have been in this career path for 15 years by this point in time. So these are all people that are making good salaries, and we're still talking about being in a place where we're living paycheck to paycheck. And I remember how unhappy and just angry they were at my boss for a layoff. Now I get it. Layoffs are not happy. Nobody wants that information. That is a big upheaval that is very difficult to hear. They are absolutely entitled to how they feel. But my reaction was different. I was sitting there in the back of my head and I was just like, I wonder what that severance package looks like. Because I didn't need the job anymore. Because I'd replaced it. I met my freedom number. I just stayed at that company because I loved their mission. I loved my boss. I loved what they were doing. I was happy there, finally. But I didn't need it. And it was summer. And I was already kind of thinking like, hey, I didn't really need this job. It was even a little bit of work that I was already doing, I felt like was already kind of in my way with the travel that I wanted to do, with kind of things that I wanted to do that summer. My husband and I had already started the conversation about starting a family. It wasn't something that we were ready to move forward with at that point in time. But I knew that when I did have a family, part of my plan, part of my freedom number was because I wanted to make sure that I would be able to stay home and raise my daughter, and that was something that I wanted my husband to have that option if he so chose as well. And that's what we've been building now for years, right? That had been about 6 years into buying real estate by this point in time. So we were making the money we needed. We were making that freedom number, but we retained our jobs because we liked it. So my boss does her best she can to calm us all down at that period of time and just lets us know, hey, layoffs are going to be coming. And what was really interesting was that my role as that manager, I was hiring people, I fired people, and we actually had to lay off a lot of our staff in previous times. So the fact that my coworkers were not aware, hey, we just laid off a bunch of our staff, there's a good chance that we're going to be on the chopping block too. I got to say, years later, I still think that was kind of interesting that no one thought that was going to be possible for us, because honestly, nobody in corporate America is ever safe. So when we got off the call, I actually messaged through Microsoft Teams. I chatted my boss and said, hey, can you get back on a call with me? And she was like, of course, sure, hop on this link. So we got back on the call, and I just kind of said to her, I was like, I'll take it. And she was like, what? And I was like, you can lay me off, I'm fine. And she was like, I thought you were gonna get on this call so you can yell at me. She goes, you were so quiet during the bigger meeting. She was like, I thought you were gonna, call me back just so you can ream me out like everybody else did. And I said, no, I'm like, honestly, I'm in a position where I don't really kind of need the money. So I love it here, but I see how upset all my coworkers are and how much that's gonna impact their life. To be honest, I was kind of thinking about quitting anyways. So tell me more about the severance package you guys are offering. And we just kind of laughed about it. We decided to create an onboarding plan where I would then be the person that was laid off. I will say I do love the fact that she shared with me that I was not going to be the one that she was going to lay off. And what was cool is I was actually able to leave that company on really great terms and stay in touch with her. So to be honest, if there was any other time that I was like, hey, you got a cool project, I kind of want to come work on something, I totally know I can call her and I can go back and I could do whatever that looks like. But at the point in time, it was really great to be able to say, hey, you know what? This isn't serving me anymore. And I have the choice and I get the control to say, this isn't really where I want to be right now. And that was awesome. What was interesting was after that point then, we decided to give a couple of weeks for offboarding so I can kind of wrap up some of my projects and transition over things and say goodbye to everybody and all that. And what was so funny was a lot of people were asking me where I was going, and they know that the company was having a lot of layoffs at that period of time. So people were asking me where I was going because they were hoping that I can kind of get them a job somewhere else that might not have them on the chopping block as well. And what was really funny was I just kept saying, like, well, I'm retiring. And people were like, oh, haha. No, like, Becky, really, where are you going? And I was like, no, really, I'm actually just retiring. I'm not taking another role. And a lot of those people I actually connected with, and since it was kind of in that work from home post-COVID era, a lot of calls actually were still without video. So people weren't able to kind of tell my age, and they just knew the sound of my voice. They didn't know my picture. And it was interesting to hear a lot of people just kind of be like, oh, I got to say, your voice, you sound, a little bit younger than like retirement age. And I was like, cool, but retirement age is whatever you make of it. Retirement age does not have to be 65, now probably closer to 70 for millennials. And it was really just great to be like, no, I'm actually 40 and I'm retiring. And that was a really big goal of mine. That was kind of like my place that I really wanted to get to with my freedom number, was to retire by the time I'm 40. Now 42, have a kid, and what's great is that I get to be home. I have been home, and my husband has been home now. My daughter is 8 months old, and she's not in daycare. She gets to be with us. We do get a lot of help from grandma, which is really nice. So I definitely want to make sure that it's not that it's just us. My mother is incredibly helpful, and we have a lot of great family and friends and support system around us. But we get to be here, and we get to put her to bed at night, and we get to wake her up in the morning. And it's just been a really nice experience to get to say that the way that we wanted to live our life is something that we actually get to see come into play. And to be honest, it's all thanks to real estate. If it was not for real estate, we would not be in this position. If it was not for our rental properties and us growing to that freedom number, I wouldn't be here. Lady Landlords wouldn't be here because I would still be back in corporate America. So how can you now do this? Because to be honest, everything I just shared with you is really not anything unique, special. You did not hear me mention that I won the lottery. You did not hear me mention that I all of a sudden found some inheritance from some uncle I never even knew that I had. It was small steps, intentional buying, and just really adding property after property, year after year after year. It took us years to build it, but the difference is we actually made the decision to start, and we made the decision to be intentional with how that is growing. So, like I said, there was that kind of turning point around 2020 where we really said, hey, this is starting to replace our income. We really need to think about this. And then I got to that place where, for me, the focus really needed to be, how do we replace our bills, okay? I wasn't looking for, like, leaving my job at that period of time. I was really just looking for stability. That was the first freedom number I did. Then my second freedom number is, what do I need if I actually want to leave my day job, right? What was important there was that I really made sure to calculate, what are our monthly expenses? I tracked all of our spending. I still do. Every penny that goes in and out of my household, I know where it's going, what it's being spent on. I needed to know what was the essential expenses I needed to cover. What would give me then maybe room to breathe a little bit more and be able to give me the options that I wanted to see in my future. For me, what was important there was not just replacing my income, but also I needed to cover medical insurance. That's one of the biggest questions we get in Lady Landlords is, what do women do when they work full-time in real estate and they don't have a full-time W-2? Well, I need to pay for medical insurance. And that's a pretty penny, let me tell you. That needed to be factored into what my freedom number is, okay? I wanted to make sure to get all my travel in. I wanted to make sure to get all of those other essentials, especially now knowing that we were planning a family. I needed to think about what those costs were going to be, and then I was able to really come up with what that freedom figure was for me. To me, really what I was looking for was that 10K in profit coming in. Okay, that was what was going to be incredibly important to me. That was what was going to make sure I was covering my bills, covering my quality of life, covering my medical insurance, and also preparing myself to be able to start a family. So what did I do with that now? Cool, I know my number, but where do we go with that now? I want you to make sure you calculate out what that number is. Take some time after this episode here and really write down what that number is going to look like. Then step 2 is you need to reverse engineer it. You need to think about how many rentals is it actually going to take. What I find really interesting is a lot of people go when they find a property and they look at it as, what can I afford? What's in my price point? Cool, I'll buy that. Oh, and the cash flow happens to be $100. No. What do you need to purchase and kind of reverse engineer that that's going to give you the money that you look for? For me, I knew I didn't want a big portfolio, okay? I wanted to make sure that every single door that I brought in was bringing me at least $500 a door. Why is that? To get to 10K months, $500 a door, that now means I need 20 doors. That's a lot. I didn't want any more than 20 doors. I still don't. I have 17 right now, and I make more than 10K a month. But that was something that I did not want to have a ton of properties with. So I needed to look for at least a minimum of 500. Okay, because otherwise I was just going to start. If I started collecting up properties at $100 a door here and here and here, to get to 10K months, that is a lot of doors. Okay, that was something I didn't really want to be in a position to. So what I needed to really say was, how do I reverse engineer this? If I need to get to those 10K months, what can I do? I could literally have just said, hey, I'm going to go buy one rental and make 10K a month. That's cool, but that's going to be a very expensive property to be able to buy. Okay, that really was not, once again, what I was sitting there thinking about, as I don't really have a trust fund. So that was something that I really needed to say, what was going to be reasonable in my market to be able to buy, and what were the realistic returns to bring in. Your portfolio does not have to be enormous, but you have to think when you're buying properties, not just, well, can I afford this, but how does this impact the ultimate goal that I am getting to? Does this help me get to that place? Or is it really just a drop in the bucket, but really not helping me make any progress? The third part of this is you need to set a deadline. It's really important to say when this thing is happening. I am very fortunate right now that I get to talk to lady landlords all day, all the time. And I get to hear what they are working on and what they are looking for. And what's amazing to me is how many landlords, how many women and lady landlords I talk to that say, oh, I've been wanting to do this for years. I've been thinking about this for years. I've wanted to be in real estate forever. I've wanted to do this for just so long, but yet they still haven't done it. Either they own nothing, or maybe they own one or two things, and sometimes they're the complete wrong property. So in order to really take kind of that dream, that wish, and really decide to make it a dedicated goal, you need a deadline, okay? This is actually something I'm going to be rolling out also in Lady Landlords. You might have seen me mention this here, but I'm going to be putting together a small group cohort called Close by Christmas. And the entire goal of what we're doing there is to be able to focus on how are we getting that next rental property by the holidays, okay? And it doesn't have to be, and it's not all focused, it's not the importance of actually getting that next rental. It's the idea of taking a meaningful step. It's moving forward. It's being intentional and really saying I'm following through on this. I get it. We have families. We have jobs. We have, once again, holidays. Right now we are in summer. We have summer vacations. There are other things going on, and those are okay. To me, there needs to be a fantastic quality of life in order to succeed in anything, but we don't want to lose sight of what our goal is here, which is to reach that freedom number that we set, okay? So Close by Christmas, the whole goal of that is to really be focused on taking that meaningful step and making progress, and not just saying next 4th of July, oh, still didn't buy another rental property. Oh, still haven't analyzed deals. Still haven't figured out how to do that. Still not really sure where I should be buying. No, it's to quit saying I'll do it next year and to really be able to say, look what I accomplished. Now on my Independence Day, I can share about the next rental that I got and to really being able to grow and move forward. And I want to encourage you to really decide if you are in a place where you want to commit to that or not. If so, that's perfectly fine. But let's call a spade and say right now you have other priorities, and real estate's not one of them. But if it is a priority to you, well then let's go out and let's actually be intentional about what that looks like. And I have to say, I've been a little fired up this year when it comes to action taking. I have done a lot of different things, even with just in Lady Landlord, since becoming a mom last fall. And one of the reasons for that is I feel like I've kind of been in a spot where I realize a little bit more where life and time are fragile. I mean, my daughter is 8 months old right now, and just the changes that she has gone through and the type of person that she's become is completely different than she was 3 weeks ago. And what she was 8 months ago. She's not even 1, and just the milestones and the way that she's changed over time is just amazing, right? And I've never had kids before, so this is a weird thing for me to see. But also as a woman, I feel like the first thing that I felt when I had my daughter was, oh my God, I have to live forever now. And the reason for that is because I want to be present to be able to see and participate in her life. I want to know her as best I can, and I want her to know me and where she came from and my husband and the rest of our family. That is something to me that all of a sudden I have a very keen awareness to the fragility of life right now. And I want to make sure that I can continue to be in a place where I can choose what my schedule looks like, and I can spend time throughout my day with my daughter, and I can go to all the school events. Like, I still want to be the mom that's like the class mom that goes on field trips. Like, I'm excited to do that, and I cannot believe I am saying that. But that's the space that I want to be in. And this year, I am drawn so much more to being able to work with women that are ready to take action. I'll never forget, a few months ago, I did an information session for the Lady Landlords property tour that we did down in the Dominican Republic. Women actually flew to the Dominican Republic and got on a bus with me and looked at different properties, and we analyzed those deals. Women made offers right there that day. It was one of the coolest things that I've done, and I cannot wait to do that again in 2027. But when I did that information session about what that trip was going to be like, because I get it, you're flying to a foreign country with a woman you met on the internet, I understand you probably had some questions. To me, when I did that information session, there was a woman that was on that call, and she asked me, hey, for those that aren't going on the trip, are you going to do a free webinar where you give away all the information that you'd be giving to the people on that trip? And my reaction was no. And I feel that some people on the call were actually taken back a little bit by my response to that. And the reason why I said no, and I explained this on the call too, the reason I am not doing that is because I am working with action takers. I want to work with the women that are saying, I'm going to do this. Hey, yeah, maybe I need some guidance. Maybe I need some knowledge. Maybe I need some more confidence. But I am committed to actually doing this. Giving free information in a space where you're not going to use it is not worth my time or your time, right? Information is not easy, is not difficult to find these days. Let's be real. You can get information. There are podcasts out there. There are webinars that you can join, but who cares what information you have if you're not using it? That's the space that's making the difference for me this year. I want to see you make progress on your goals. I want to see you take that next step. No matter how big or small that step may be, for you, that's a big step. Moving forward, making that progress is incredibly important. And like I said, I'm just in a place right now, personally, where time on earth is limited. And I have no idea what that looks like right now, but I'm going to make sure that I'm using all of my moments to the best of my ability. And I want to be around other people that are looking to do the same. So if that is you, write the word chat down here in the comments, and I will make sure to send you over links so that way we can chat about the Close by Christmas. The doors to Close by Christmas cohort are closing on July 15th, and we're getting started that following week. So if that's something, if this podcast spoke to you and you want to be able to celebrate your Independence Day, if you want to be able to say this is the year that you did things differently and then therefore were rewarded in different ways, let's have a conversation and see what it leads to. It costs nothing to find out what your future could look like. And then let's talk about how we can get an action plan in place for you. All right? So that's my soapbox for the day. Thank you very much for joining me for today's episode of the Lady Landlords podcast. Please do make sure to hit that follow or subscribe button so you do not miss the next episode of the Lady Landlords podcast. And I will see you all back in our Facebook community shortly.
Thank you for listening to the Lady Landlords podcast. If you're feeling stuck in your real estate investing journey, visit lady-landlord.com to book a 15-minute orientation call with me and see if you're ready to join our mentorship program. Or you can subscribe to our newsletter and join our Facebook group for exclusive real estate investing tips and offers. Invest with confidence. Become a Lady Landlord today.